Greenville. Voice of God.
That was
Greenville
ChatGPT.
was here on the mountain of Cherokee lands. We were on the border of the Cherokee Nation, whose main villages were located in modern day Oconee County. As part of the Iroquoian Nation, the Cherokees may have set up, we don't completely know, but we believe they set up temporary summer camps along the banks of the Reedy River. When we talk about Greenville's history, we usually start in 1768. That's when Richard Paris, a white trader, set up a fur business with 12 enslaved people at the falls of the Reedy River. But even the way we begin tells a story. By marking our beginning with the arrival of the white man, we overlook the thousands of years of Cherokee presence here. Paris was a colorful, controversial figure, to say the least, and one of the first to model the exploitation that would define much of our region's early dealings with minority population. An Indian interpreter, John Watts, once called him a very dangerous fellow who will breed great disturbances if he is left alone, for he will tell the Indians any lies to please them. At the time, as I said before, only Cherokee owned land, and only Cherokee could own land. And to get around this, Paris married, have you all heard this story? I think some of you may have. To get around this, Paris married a Cherokee woman, Pratchett, and fathered two children, George and Nellie. Through George, his son, he managed to acquire nearly 100,000 acres along the Reedy River, stretching to the Erie near today's Spartanburg County line. It was land obtained under somewhat questionable means. The rest of the story, Paris may have also kept his European wife, Rhonda, and their children in Greenville, although records are unclear whether or not they lived here or not. In 1773, Paris was convicted of holding Indian land illegally and forced to surrender what he claimed had been gifted. With no written documentation, the courts found no evidence that the land was ever rightfully his. Still, he already established a plantation that included a sawmill, gristmill, stables, and a trading post. When the Revolutionary War erupted, Paris sided with the Tories and their Cherokee allies, terrorizing Patriot settlers in the upstate. Retaliation was swift. Patriot troops raided his plantation, burned his mills and home, and imprisoned him briefly in Charleston. He never returned to the upstate, but his name lingers on Paris Mountain, spelled wrong. A reminder of a man who left chaos behind. From the start, Greenville's story has been tangled. From this so-called founder was an adulterer accused of cheating the Cherokee out of their land. And I find it interesting that as the jewel and the buckle of the Bible Belt, we cannot ignore that our origins carried both opportunity and loss, prosperity, and displacement. The first European settlers to what became Greenville County were Scotch-Irish, Germans, and English farmers. Many had fled Scotland from Ireland only to face high rents and religious discrimination. Mostly Presbyterian, they came to America through Philadelphia, then followed the Great Wagon Road south. They built cabins near water, primarily the Reedy River, cleared fields and family labor, and gathered at crossroads and sanctuaries. Scots-Irish mother teaching children by firelight, a circuit rider carrying letters of communion. From foreign and hides and towns, hides and tools, a town grew. They weren't always immigrants from abroad, but they were all from somewhere else. Settling on land with prior claims, they brought languages, they brought food, they brought customs. They built churches, schools, and markets that anchored later arrival. By the early 1800s, Greenville was emerging from a frontier outpost to a small village. Schools, churches, hotels, and courthouse gave shape. The town still depended upon slavery and agriculture. but its identity as an educational and cultural hub was already visible. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, Greenville was a textile town. Mill villages spread. We're right in the middle of one. Main Street homes. Between 1870 and 1910, immigrants didn't dominate our growth like in New York or in Chicago, but they did shape it, quietly powering shops, railroads, mills, and cultural life. The footprints of immigrants were also small in number but deep in influence. Greeks, Italians, and Lebanese arrived with limited English and unlimited drive. The Greeks came first around 1905. Young men left mountain villages in Greece, escaping poverty and political unrest. They began modestly, thrift carts on Main Street, candy stands on storefronts, shoe shines, chairs, and busy quarters. You're going to see a theme emerge. Within a decade, they found their niche. Food. By the 1910s, cafes and restaurants dotted downtown. The Sanitary Cafe, anybody remember the Sanitary Cafe? I don't. But it became a landmark where mill workers, travelers, and townsfolk gathered. They weren't just places to eat, they were places where Greenville's business was done, where friendships were formed, and where short stories were shared. Candy shops grew into diners into restaurants. I hope you'll recognize some of these names. Stack's Restaurants, Pete's, The Clock. Pete's is where we hung out in Greenville High, by the way. Institutions that were woven into our lives, and families like the Comics family showed how hospitality creates belonging. A table where anyone can pull up a chair. Jewish families arrived around the same time, and by the early 1900s, they opened downtown stores selling clothing, furniture, household goods, the staples of a growing city. They also built religious life. Greenville's first synagogue gave a scattered community a place to gather. They faced prejudice but stayed engaged, serving on boards, supporting hospitals, and building schools. I hope you recognize this man. Max Heller's story stands out. Max was a personal hero. He was a Jewish teenager in Vienna when Hitler's army marched into Austria in 1938. His family could not get out. But with the sponsorship of textile leaders in upstate, Max was able to escape Nazi Europe. He boarded a ship alone, carrying fear, loss, and hope in an equal measure, and stepped onto American soil with no English and no money. Greenville, South Carolina, an unlikely place for a young Austrian refugee, opened its doors to him and welcomed him. He started sweeping floors in a textile firm. He learned the business from the ground up. And eventually he built his own company. Along the way, he became a citizen, raised a family, and invested deeply in the life of his city. By the 1970s, Greenville asked him to lead as their mayor. He was special. He governed with the perspective of someone who knew what it meant to lose a homeland. He wanted Greenville to be a place where no one felt shut out. He believed in sidewalks and trees, but also in belonging and dignity. His leadership was grounded in tolerance, civic trust, and a vision of public space that welcomed everyone. Max Heller's life is Greenville's story in miniature, an immigrant who fled persecution, arrived with nothing, and gave back more than he ever received. The lesson is immigration also begins with hardship and ends in leadership. That's the story here. In the late 1970s, after serving as mayor and proving that a city could be reborn through sidewalks and storefronts and civic trust, Max was encouraged to run for Congress. He entered the 1978 race for South Carolina's 4th District. His opponent was Carol Campbell, a young Republican lawyer. On paper, it was a contest of vision. Heller's progressive, European-influenced civic renewal versus Campbell's conservative Southern politics. But in practice, the race grew darker and became one of the most racist campaigns of all time. Heller's background as an Austrian-born Jewish refugee became a weapon. Whispers spread that he was not really one of us. Opponents question whether a man who spoke with an accent, who had not been born on Southern soil, could truly represent South Carolina. His Jewish faith was dragged into the campaign with coded language about outsiders and values. It was the kind of prejudice he had fled as a teenager in Vienna, and it hurt. Now echoing in the place he had devoted his life to build. Heller fought back with dignity, focusing on ideas and community, not division. This is reflected in a thank you note he wrote to Mary Mills, who was the person he met in Austria. He danced with her at a dance in Austria, and she was the only person he knew in the United States. So she's the one he called to say, "Can you get me here?"
Unknown caller.
He came within a few thousand votes of winning the election. He lost the election, but the campaign exposed Greenville's tensions, the promise of inclusion against the persistence of fear. Starting in the 1980s and accelerating from the 1990s and 2000s, workers from Mexico and Central America came to the upstate. They built houses, landscaped neighborhoods, staffed food plants and restaurants, and eventually advanced in manufacturing. At first, they came alone, many sending money home. Over time, their families joined, schools added bilingual staff, churches offered Spanish services, food trucks, Saturday soccer became part of the local rhythm. And today, the Latinos are Greenville's fastest growing immigrant group. You see it in second graders translating at parent-teacher conferences, at contractors running their own crews, and festivals drawing thousands downtown. After the Vietnam War, local churches sponsored Vietnamese refugees. Were any of you in Greenville around that time? And you remember, I'm sure. Families arrived with little and rebuilt quickly. Restaurants, groceries, and salons expanded Greenville's definition of food and services. And by the 1980s and 1990s, professionals from India, Korea, and China arrived. Hospitals recruited doctors, universities attracted students, manufacturers hired engineers, cultural organizations grew, and grocery aisles changed with them. We also see the immigrant story in Greenville's economy today. Look at DJ Rama. He's the son of Indian immigrants who arrived in upstate decades ago. Excuse me. His family began with a single hotel. I get choked up when I talk about the hotel. With a single hotel, they worked long hours at the front desk and in the laundry room. And from those humble beginnings grew JHM Hotels, which is now Aura Hotels. It's one of the largest hospitality companies in the Southeast. Under DJ's leadership, family business that helped transform Greenville's skyline and its economy. It's hotels that welcome visitors, convention spaces that attract global events, jobs that support thousands of families. This is immigration woven into bricks and mortar, payrolls, and paychecks. His story reminds us that immigration is not about history or about politics. It's about the hotels where guests sleep, the restaurants where we gather, the jobs that power our families. It's about seeing Greenville not as a small southern town, but as a global city shaped by global people. Greenville continues to be shaped by leaders who once arrived here as newcomers. This story would not be, and I apologize for those that I'm leaving out of this story, by the way. But this story would not be complete without talking about Vivian Long. Born in Hong Kong, she came to Greenville in 1963. She built her career here. The Dragon Den, anyone remember the Dragon Den? Are you guessing? She made her mark as a community leader. She represented a new generation of immigrant leadership, global in perspective, local in commitment. Like Heller, Vivian reminds us that immigration is not just about survival or economic contribution. It's about belonging. It's about people who choose this community and take the responsibility for its future. Her story, alongside DJ and Maxim, tells us something essential. Greenville's best chapters have always been written when we welcome people. We welcome people who weren't born here, but make this place their home. Global firms amplify this shift, with Michelin moved to its North American headquarters here in 1975, bringing French engineers and executives into town. In 1992, BMW announced its Spartanburg plant, tying Greenville into global supply chains. The BMW plant is the second largest manufacturing plant in the world for BMW. In recent years, Greenville has welcomed families from Congo, Sudan, Syria, Afghanistan, and Burma. They arrive with resilience built for years in camps and separation from family. You'll find them in schools, in hospitals, in small businesses, in places of worship. But often the help is practical: rides, forms, furniture. The learning goes both ways, however. We become better neighbors by slowing down, by listening, and by making room. Immigration has shaped our cultural life as well. The Edvard, and I cannot say his last name, so I'm just going to apologize. But I just call him Edvard. Edvard's story is truly one made for Hollywood. In 1991, Edvard, former conductor of the Greenville Symphony, defected from the Soviet Union in Greenville. With the involvement of the FBI, the CIA, it was quite the operation. But he had defected from the Soviet Union and asked for asylum here. And Greenville embraced him, and under his baton, the symphony expanded and flourished. Everyday bridges. If you want to see immigration's impact, look at our daily lives. In schools where bilingual signs say you belong. In workplaces where potlucks become part of the cultural class. In third places, the cafes, the parks, the barbershops, the library, where neighbors meet across cultures. Yes, there's friction. There are language barriers, there are housing costs, there's fear of undocumented families. The Greenville's pattern is clear: when we solve practical problems, tensions ease. More ESL classes, clinics with sliding scales, translated city forms. More important, inviting newcomers into the important decisions that we're making as a city and a community. People take care of what they help build. So pulling the threads together, step back and you see early Europeans built the fields, the churches, the markets. The Greeks, Italians, and Lebanese gave us diners and groceries. Jewish families built institutions. Max Heller gave us civic renewal. Latino immigrants strengthened our workforce and festivals. Asian immigrants and global firms expanded our economy. Refugees reminded us what resilience looks like. Artists widened our vision. Together, these threads make Greenville what we know: economically stronger, culturally richer, more future-ready. Immigration is not a sidebar. Immigration is Greenville's story. From cabins on the Reed to cafes on Main, from mill villages to Michelin labs, from church pews to symphony seats, we're a community shaped by people on the move. From Richard Paris to the Connets, from associates to Latino entrepreneurs, from Vietnamese refugees to Afghan newcomers, Greenville has always been a city of immigrants. That's our strength. It explains our adaptability, our food, our economy, and our ambitions. Thank you.
Cynical Tom, that is not countering anything you said, of course, but when I came here in '75, worked for Mayor Heller, and there are stop signs in our neighborhoods, our black neighborhoods, so that you couldn't see them because you basically could conveniently run right by them. And basically Sterling was basically living at one point into the 40s and 50s on its own. nobody was benefiting those businesses except the people who lived in the neighborhoods. And Berea, we still suffer from integration in our churches and our neighborhoods. And the view of us as a salad bowl is true, and yet it's not true.
Yep.
And today, we are really needing to struggle hard to bring that salad bowl into full reality. Sorry,
No, I totally agree with you, and I purposely made this talk optimistic.
amen. I understand.
And I have another talk I do on the history of our African American population, which is a really interesting history. That's when we really get into how bad things were. We had serious redlining. There was an ordinance that was passed in 1928 that did not allow African Americans to buy in certain neighborhoods. There was a plan that was done for the city of Greenville in 1907 that one of the main components to make this a vibrant community that was suggested was we need to make sure we continue to have segregation and separate the races. That was their big thing. So we struggle with it, and we still struggle with it greatly. Today's, have to be careful. Today's political environment is challenging. And it's difficult for a lot of us and a lot of y'all, and the racism that continues, the discrimination that continues. But I'm hopeful that maybe if we can continue those conversations with each other through forums like this, there's hope. And there's real hope. And maybe I'm just naive, but I feel good about our future and what we're doing with people that are not exactly like everybody else. So anyway, that was my, sorry for the soapbox.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Russell, thank you for that. That was incredible. You know, so much of the Greenville we know and love was created from immigrants in our past, but it's still being created today by immigrants that are our neighbors and our friends and in our community every day. So Alicia asked me to talk a little bit about a project. Mike? Yeah. Okay. Alicia asked me to talk a little bit about a project that we worked on. It's not on. Okay. Is that better? So I wanted to say back in February, I was sitting where you guys were sitting. I came rushing into a Fourth Friday meeting and I didn't pay attention to the life like I should have. And I went to the back table and I put my name down that I was here, you know, I went and sat down. And to find out, I had signed up for a Just Stay immigration justice class. Instead of signing in, I had signed up. And, you know, I want to tell you, for those of you guys who've been through Just Stay classes, you know they're a lot of work. If you're not familiar with them, it's sort of the foundation elements of Village Engaged, but they're 8-week classes. You do a lot of reading, a lot of research. Even more difficult, you do a lot of self-reflection. At the end, there's a call to action. If you want to take it up, there's a call to action for you to take steps after the class. So I had taken one of those classes the summer before and I was like, well, I know what that is. I'm not sure I'm ready for that. I don't know if I have time. Well, maybe it's not the right time for me to do this. And, you know, I hesitated, but I decided to go ahead and I stayed the course with it. And I decided to take the course. I don't have to tell you, I'm so grateful that I did because it was started back in March. And as many of you guys, you know, probably know, it was a time when we were starting to see things every day change in our community for our immigrant neighbors. And it was not only a great curriculum and a lot of good reading and things to learn about our history and our role in creating the environment that people are fleeing from, you know, contributing to that, our country's contribution to some of that. It was a time when we often started our classes with, did you see what was in the news this past week? Did you see this? Did you know this? And we were able to process that together in real time, which was so, so helpful. So, you know, all of us who are involved in justice work, we all do what I call our own self work. We probably do it all the time. Sometimes we choose our self-work, but sometimes our self-work chooses us. And this was an example where my self-work chose me. So fast forward from that, Village Engage, with a number of people in this room, hosted an immigration dinner. And it was a wonderful experience, a lot of good speakers, a really powerful simulation. And there had been 3 Just Faith immigration justice classes in the spring. We all finished closely to the same time. And after that dinner, we came together and decided we wanted to take some actions. And so we created 2 action paths. One was to repeat the event we had just been to, because it was fabulous and powerful and a great learning opportunity. Because if we want to be an ally, a better ally, if we want to walk in justice, then we need to teach ourselves about the challenges that others face. We can't count on them to tell us everything we need to know. We need to step up and do that ourselves, get our own learning opportunities, make those things happen. So one group was focused on replicating those events. The other group was focused on story sharing. Because the other thing you guys know, and we see it still every day, there's a lot in the news about immigration every day. And most of it is negative. But most of it is also big and national and nebulous and, you know, stereotypes and a lot of coded languages, Russell said. And so we decided we wanted to lift up stories of local immigrants. We wanted to share stories of local immigrants in the community who are living here in Greenville and talk about what's really happening on the ground here in Greenville. So we started a story sharing. I have a podcast, so I volunteered my podcast as a platform for that. And I thought it was going to be, I was telling Carol a minute ago, I thought it was going to be kind of simple. Then we had like one episode, a few little stories, that'd be it, you know. Well, the team that came around this had a lot richer and deeper ideas about what we could do, which was really beautiful. So it's ended up being a 4-month takeover of the podcast, 13 episodes, of which 7 are long form interviews with immigrants local to our community. But we also interviewed some folks who are what I would call allies in action. They're folks who are taking structural action in the community to support immigrants. One example, I talked to Matt back there about the role that First Baptist Church is playing in their partnership with the local Haitian church and also in making their church a safe and welcoming space for immigrants. So I talked to a number of people around that I call allies in action. And so we had 7 stories that we're going to share. As you can imagine, it's not easy. This fall, the forum at Alicia and the Village Engage are going to be, people are going to be putting on this fall, is about courageous voices. But I'm going to tell you, people who shared their story with me were also courageous voices. Because it's not an easy time to share your story. It's not if you're an immigrant, it's not an easy time, but it's not a safe time. And what was really heartwarming to me was I've never interviewed kids before on my podcast, but I interviewed kids. The youngest one was 8. Their parents, I think, were the bravest people to let their young children raise their voices and use their voices to speak up for their community and for what they want our community to become. So that was really powerful. We call this series New Roots, New Voices, listening to our immigrant neighbors. And hopefully, I mean, I know I have been, all of us who were involved in it and folks who listen to it, I think we will learn more about what it means to be an immigrant here in Greenville, specifically here in Greenville, and also how to become better allies, how we can step up and do more and be more in our community. And in the interviews and discussions, we talked about challenges, losses. We had a look at what they hope for their future. And so I would invite you to listen to the podcast episode. If you can find it anywhere that you listen to podcasts, the podcast is called State of Inclusion. There are cards back there on the art display that have QR. There's QR code posted up there, and there's cards. Thank you, Alicia. And I'll just give you a couple of teasers. One is first person we interviewed was, did you guys eat at the Pita House on 290 up? You people do? Okay, so we interviewed Seattle Moose, who is one of the founders and owners of Pita House. And he's been in Greenville longer than I am. So he's not exactly a new voice. He was at one moment a new voice, but he's a great person to talk to. And he has such a wonderful story about his contribution, his family's contribution to Greenville. His children were all born here, and they, some of them were taken over the restaurant, but he has one son that's becoming a doctor, came back to Greenville to practice here. So, another one, I'll just tell you another quick story. Also, people are listening to this, and from listening to these stories, they're taking action. So I had somebody reach out after listening to my interview with the little 8-year-old boy that included his part of his interview. I wasn't even supposed to interview him, and after he listened to me interview his sisters, he said, "Oh, can I be interviewed too?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, let's ask your mom." And so his mom said yes, and I said, "Well, okay." So we practiced a little bit, and then I interviewed him. And one of the things he talked about was the fact that he had to leave his bike at home when they fled Afghanistan, and he had to leave his dog at home, and he missed those things deeply. And because he left his dog and he loved dogs, he wanted to be a canine officer when he grew up. And he also missed his bike. He had one here that had been stolen. And Mill Village Ministries has an Earn a Bike program. And he was able to earn a bike because someone had called me and said, "Well, why don't you hook him up with this? And I heard the story and I think it would be good if he could do this." And so he was able to earn his bike and get that recently. So one way we build community is from just listening to each other's stories and from reaching out, even in tiny little ways, sometimes just small ways, just sending an email to say, "Did you know about the Mill Village program that you can earn a bike?" Those are small things, but they make a difference in a person's life. So class was a blessing, working was a blessing. I want to mention the art that's in the back though real quick. Elisa's already given me the pass on. And I'm going to thank Wendy Lynn particularly for this because we wanted to do some work around art. Wendy had an idea of some kids that we could reach out to. And so we had 5 Afghan youth. They were from 2 different families, siblings with each other. And they created this beautiful art for us in the back. And you'll see, if you go back there, you'll see above each of the art is a little clip, a little quote from the interview that I had with the girls. They're all girls. And what's beautiful is some of the pictures you'll see are young Afghan women imagining what their friends back home are having to face today, who don't have the right to go to school, or for them who lost the right to go to school, and their experience of fleeing country. So you will see some of those things in the art back there. I just want to do a real quick shout out to our team because I didn't do this. I happen to be the voice of it, but I didn't do all this work. So first I want to thank our guests, the brave parents who let their kids talk, the story sharing team, Wendy Lynn, Matt Rollins, Alicia, Beth Meyer, Becca Gardner, Kristen Lewis, Tricia Sanford, and Jean Fontaine. Couple along the way from folks like Russell talking about immigrant history, the First Baptist Church who's hosted our events, My Neighbor's Voice, and the Greenville Center for Creative Arts who helped with the artwork. And of course, none of this would happen without Alicia and Village Engaged being our leadership and sponsor for this. So anyway, thank you so much.
So we do have a few minutes. I know we have one question, but we do have a few minutes for questions. I know there was a lot shared. I feel like I need to sit down and take a whole class with you, Russell. But yeah, if you have any questions before we wrap up. You said
Doctor, I'm the easy grader.
you're the easy. Oh, that's perfect. I need to take too much more right now. Any questions about anything Russell shared or even about the project that we're doing here with Amy and many other organizations? As a matter of fact, if you're a part of we call ourselves the Faith and Immigration Coalition, if you're a part of that group, raise your hand if you've been involved in that work. Yeah, so there are several people here who have been very heavily involved in the work of really trying to get more people to engage around this conversation. It's such a, unfortunately, we are maybe interacting with it just from news reports or just from what we see on social media. And the best way for us to be able to find common ground and be able to identify ways that we can move forward together is by having conversations, face-to-face conversations, and really being able to connect with real people who are impacted by the policies in particular that we're seeing currently. So do we wanna stop and have a few minutes just to engage with Amy and Russell? Great.
I have a question for y'all. Where's the hope? What's your sense of, it's complicated, you know, but what's your sense of what's next and what can Greenville do, specifically politicians? What can the politicians do to make this more welcoming and create more belonging?
I think now is a time where we need to step up and be strong advocates for our immigrant neighbors and friends. And it may not always be easy. A voice of advocacy may not always be easy. I think history has taught us that, but I think that's needed. And kindness, just reaching out, being kind. Where I work, we do have an immigrant population who does work alongside of us, and they're delightful. And there's no difference. There's no reason for a lot of what we're seeing in the news headlines. So I just think the hope comes from things like this. I have a strong faith in God, and I just think advocacy is needed. And as long as we have people who are willing to be advocates, there's hope.
I think, like, framing it in terms of politicians, like, one of the main things that you guys can do is just toe the line on keeping things positive, not whitewashing things, but setting that standard of we are not going to talk about certain people groups. We're not going to entertain negativity in this area. We have so much on that on a national scene. And I think Greenville, it's different. There's the opportunity for it to maintain a noticeable difference. And then also, I think what you guys were talking about earlier, like looking at areas of town that are still struggling. One of the things that I think about when I see that and I get discouraged is I think we live in this already not yet. And as a Christian, I know that I live in an already not yet, but also just applying that to Greenville. Like Greenville has already came so far, but it's not yet there. What can we do to continue to push it forward?
I would like to say, I appreciate your statement, Russell, when you said the willingness to have hard conversations. But when you get to the community versus the politician, I believe most politicians are not willing to have hard conversations. They pretty much look at what do I need to stay here in this position. But I love this conversation because in my mind, what moves the needle forward is that you celebrate the differences. As you talked about all of the different nationalities that have come to America that make. And this young man over here made a point about African Americans. And as you were talking, I thought about, well, maybe that may be the problem. African Americans, when we talk about Chinese Americans, Vietnamese Americans, but we kind of separate that. So even in your talk, you went from the Indian population, you mentioned African Americans, but we don't have that link, we don't have that history to say, what did African Americans contribute? I'm a Greenvillian, I'm born here, I'm proud of my history. I'm proud of how I was raised, but I came from a family where my parents believed wholeheartedly, and this is probably how they survived, is that there are good people everywhere that do a good job. My mother really stressed that. And coming up through the 50s and the 60s, that is what I focused on. And even after I've lived different places, I've lived in Massachusetts, Virginia, Kansas City, Missouri, came back home after over 30 years. But I came back home hoping to bring back what I have learned in different communities
way, you and I are not politicians, so.
That's right. That's what. Right
Hi, my name is Terry. I'm from Waltz nonprofit organization. They hired me as the Spanish outreach. Part of the reason why I was so happy to do it was because Spanish. And although I'm Puerto Rican, I'm not an immigrant. I do have a lot of friends who are immigrants who need help with a whole bunch of things, mainly mental health. They go to these mental health workshops and it's all in English. And then Waltz has English workshops. I came in, now it's all, I can offer Spanish. That's a great way to be able to advocate and help out all my friends and community immigrants who are struggling with this mental health situation where they want to get help and they can't because it's only English, it's only offered in English. And I'm proud to say that I'm happy that I can make a difference and advocate for my Spanish community. Thank you.
So I want to thank all of you for offering so much to this conversation. Again, your presentation is excellent. Thank you so much, Russell. And I will take your EC class. And get my easy A here. So I'm looking forward
No,
to
I was
learning
raising
more.
the classes hard.
Okay. Easy A, but I'm down for it. So we had a lot of call to actions, I think, that came from all of you. And I want to just start from the bottom and go up. One of them that I heard was to find the good people everywhere. I believe that there are a lot of people who feel very much like all of you do, who would love to be in a setting like this, to be able to connect with other people who are looking to find ways to be able to advance justice, to be able to support and provide compassionate care to their neighbors. So help us find them and help us get them to our events like our Fourth Friday conversations. And we have a wonderful forum coming up next month. So in October, instead of having a Fourth Friday conversation, we're going to have the Voices of Courage Faith and Justice Forum. That is our annual event. We are looking to have old and young. So we'll have high school students from Legacy Charter High School, from Greenville Charter High School. We'll also have some students coming from other groups, but we'll also have people of all ages, all backgrounds who come together to learn about things that have happened in the past, great people who have stood up in the face of injustice, like our unfortunate the deceased Senator Clementa Pinckney. His wife and his 16-year-old daughter will be here talking about his legacy and the work they're doing to carry forward his message. We'll also have an out-of-town author and activist who's going to talk about how each one of us have something special inside of us that we can use to be able to advance justice, be able to work towards a better Greenville and a better community for all. I'm Kari Williams, and then we'll close out with the very first African-American who was elected to our state legislature, James Felder. He was an organizer in the 60s after the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. He got to work along with many others, making sure that all people knew that they now could go and register to vote and participate. So we are going to hear from each of them, but we also need to hear from you and hear about what you are passionate about. So this is going to be for all people on October 24th at the Phyllis Wheatley Community Center. Please do grab your tickets. We have information about how to register here, so please grab that before you go and invite others. Celebrate, yes. We enjoy celebrating around here as well, and we're looking to have opportunities to be able to lift up things that are going well in our community and opportunities that you see that we could help to amplify about what's good in our community. Of course, we can be different in Greenville. And I agree with that we have an opportunity where we are a wonderful place where we see that our differences have been what's made us so great. And so we can continue to be able to leverage that. And then of course, advocacy. We are probably going to have some opportunities for advocacy across the state. So as soon as we know about those opportunities, we'll be sending out alerts. So if you're not registered for our newsletter, please do register for our newsletter. You can go to villageengage.com to sign up for our newsletter. And when those opportunities come along for us to go to Columbia, for us to help to get people to different places to show up in support of our neighbors, you'll find out about that. So lastly, I want to invite you to our block party. Now, this is a Mill Village event. It's a free event for the whole community. We invite all of you, and of course, bring your families to come out and celebrate this beautiful project, this building that will be coming completed very, very soon. So we're gonna celebrate this beautiful space and all of the wonderful things that we will be able to do in this building with you, and with your support. So October 11th, we look forward to having you here between 10 and 3 p.m. for that. Are there any other announcements that I'm forgetting about before we close up? All right, well, if not, I do offer the opportunity for you to connect with Amy. She's gonna be in the back with the artwork. If you did not get a chance to get one of the cards, we have artwork from those children that Amy interviewed. It is beautiful, so please take one and share the cards with others. These postcards are intentionally created as postcards so that you can write a note to someone, telling them about what you learned, telling them about the series. So there's a QR card for them to be able to listen into those stories of immigrants and refugees in our community. And, okay, very, very last thing, we do have a survey. We want to know how we've done today, and we would love to get your feedback. So if you will please complete the survey before you go, you just have to scan the QR code and give us your feedback. Again, thank you for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you on October 24th at the Faith and Justice Board.
Anybody would like to? I have been born and raised,